You can take it now. Actually, I'm already on YouTube.
Okay.
You can take it now.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Actually, I'm already on YouTube.
Okay.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Kanaparo Premamrita Vanidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Kriram Puji Tao Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Prabhu Premamritam Vanidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priya Priya Karo Nemal Karang Pujito Chaitanya Kripa Bharau Bhubi Bhuva Bhara Vahan Tarak Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugo Sri Jiva Gopalaka Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugo Sriji Bhagavata Krishna Kirtana Gana Krishna Kirtana Gana Natana Param Prema Mritamani Veera Veera Jana Priya Priya Karo Nirma Pujita HARE Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri राजगचार्य सदस्यमान भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप धाम की जय। स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Apartment, and he looked at me and he said, "Ah, now you are an ideal brahmachari." He was very pleased that I had shaved my head, because he had noticed all along that I was keeping short hair, but I wouldn't shave up. And I had joined with Vishnu Jan, and he had shaved up before me, but I didn't shave up immediately. So when I finally shaved up, Prabhupada appreciated that. One time I asked Prabhupada on one of those morning walks, first walks I went with him, I asked him how many pure devotees were there on the planet. And Srila Prabhupada turned to me or to one of the devotees and he asked, how many devotees are there in ISKCON now? He said, that is how many pure devotees there are. The first letter I wrote to Prabhupada was all about Sankirtan. I told him what the results of Sankirtan were. See, what happened was that Prabhupada told us all the brahmacharis to get jobs because Jayananda was supporting the temple single-handedly. Prabhupada said it wasn't fair. So he said all the brahmacharis should go out and get jobs. So, you know, everybody did what they knew best. I remember Vishnu Jan, he decided that he was going to make flutes, bamboo flutes, and he used to stand on Haight Street, and he made all the flutes so that they played Hare Krishna. And he would just stand out on Haight Street playing Hare Krishna all day. And he said he was a Brahmin. And he told me that I was a Sudra because I went to work for Kodak. See, Gurudas was working at Kodak, so Gurudas got me a job at Kodak, and it was a very, you know, one of these high-tech jobs. I would get the film canister and break it in half. That was my job. Break the film canister, break the film canister. And then when they saw that I was really capable of doing that, they moved me up to a higher position where I would run the film through a heating elements, and it would be developed this way. And then I would get to bring it to Gurudas, who was in the darkroom developing. He got a bigger salary than I did. So you can imagine what this was like. But still it was yoga, and I felt it was yoga. I'd give the whole check to the temple, and every day I just, you know, looked forward to the lunch break. I'd immediately go out and have my little lunch, and I'd go out and with Gurudas and take lunch, and we'd have some kartals and do some kirtan. And it was the only thing that saved me was that lunch break. But after a month or two of this, it was unbearable. Gargamuni went to Montreal and talked to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said that if they don't want to do this, then let them go out on the street and chant on the streets. So we had an Istagosti, and we discussed this, and I volunteered that I would organize it, because I wanted to get out of that job. So I was very eager I was ready to do anything to get out of that job. So we did about $12 the first day, and I thought and I went back to the temple. Gargamuni had a little shop, and I said, Gargamuni, we did $12. He said, wow. He said, I'm going to give up my shop. This is big. This has huge potential. He was ready to give up his shop. So the next day I decided to take Back to Godheads with us, and when the people give a donation, I give them a Back to Godhead, and the collections, by the end of 5 days, it had gone up to $40. And I wrote Prabhupada day by day how it increased. And Prabhupada wrote me this letter and he said, don't worry so much about money. He said, if Krishna wants, he can give you the whole USA. The question is, what will you do with it? Do you know what to do with it? So it was a sobering letter. Prabhupada was very pleased with this Harinam party. He decided when he left San Francisco to open a temple in Seattle, Gargamuni and Upendra had gone there, and Prabhupada decided that the Sankirtan party should go with him. And at that point, Jayananda went to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, well, again, it was Swamiji at the time, he said, Swamiji, you know, I'd like to travel with the Sankirtan party. And Prabhupada said, but you are the president. And he said, I think this is more important. And then Prabhupada said, well, what will you do? And he said, I'll be the driver. And Prabhupada thought for a second, he said, very good, you can go. And he was willing to, he thought so much about Sankirtan that he was willing to let the top devotee, the person who was maintaining the whole temple, who was the temple president, he was prepared to let him go to become the driver of the Sankirtan party. So Jayananda joined our party that way. When the operation was going on, they gave this anesthetic. You know, they put they anesthetize you. And I remember I was meditating on Radha Ras Bihari and the Arti. I was just meditating on it, and they said count down from 10 down. I think I got down to about 7, and that was it. Then I had a dream, a very good dream, in which Srila Prabhupada had been called by the previous acharyas to make a report of his preaching mission on this planet. And the previous acharyas were all there. And they asked Prabhupada that, you know, what is your report? And Prabhupada said that he had studied the people of this planet and he had found that they had no capacity for taking any type of austerity, nor were they very capable of studying, and they were not very pious. He said the only thing that so far they seem to be able to do is that somehow they take shelter at my feet. This was the dream I had. And then they wheeled me out after the operation, and when I came in to the room which had been assigned to me, Prabhupada was sitting there. Actually, he had come to the hospital. And he said, I came here as fast as I could. I wanted to stop the operation. He said, because I think you should have had this operation in America. But anyway, now it is there. And it turned out he had come all the way in from Juhu in a jeep, right in the middle of the rush hour to try to stop this operation. So I told Prabhupada about the dream, and Prabhupada listened very intently, and he said, actually, this is so. He said, this is so. So when Prabhupada came to San Francisco, he had wanted me to come back to India to take up my service again, because he couldn't find anyone to replace me as a GBC. And so when Prabhupada was there, as soon as we got in the car, we picked him up, Prabhupada started talking about Hare Krishna land and India. And I could feel the pressure was coming down. So then we went into Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada had, you know, it was just myself and Prabhupada in the room, and he said, so, you know, what are you going to do? Are you prepared to come back to India? And I said, well, Prabhupada, I'm preaching now. And Prabhupada was a little upset. He said, what is that preaching? He said, preaching means there must be results. I said, oh, there's results. He says, what are those results? Let me see really what are the results. So I had had all of our new men shave up, and they all were completely fresh shaved, the 10 new bhaktas, and I had them each come up with a rose, and one by one they came up and they put a rose on Prabhupada's desk, and they offered their obeisances, dandavats, and then they sat down and Prabhupada started to beam, and he said, this is preaching. He was so happy to see this. He said, so you stay here. He approved of it. We came through. The next program that Prabhupada was going to was in Madras, and we stopped, the train stopped from Ahmedabad to Madras, stopped in Bombay. But because my wife was now at the temple and I was a sannyasi, I wouldn't go. So I sent my party to see Prabhupada and give the report. And I just sat in the train station waiting for them to come. It was a 6-hour or something wait over. And then suddenly Yadubar came, and he said, Prabhupada sent me here to bring you back. He said, you can come to the temple. I said, but you know, my wife is there, former wife is there, I can't go, I'm a sannyasi. I said, no, Prabhupada said, it's okay. So as soon as I came into the room and I offered my obeisance, Prabhupada said, the temple is a neutral ground. He said, it is neutral. You can be here at the same time, there's no harm. And then he asked everyone to leave the room, which was quite unusual, I thought. Because Prabhupada didn't generally do that. He asked everyone to leave the room, and he beckoned me over to the table, and he said, now tell me, give me your report. So I gave them a report, and he was so happy about this preaching report, because I had just been a sannyasi. This was his first preaching assignment he'd given me. And after it, he became so pleased, he stood up. And I had offered my obeisances, and he stood up, so I stood up, and he walked around the table, and he just took me in his arms, and he held me very tightly. He embraced me on one side, and then he embraced me on the other side, and he said, now take this sannyas mantra in your heart and go everywhere and preach. He said, Kirtananda is a sannyasi, Brahmananda is a sannyasi, and you're a sannyasi. Now I can retire peacefully and translate. Go and preach. And I was just, my whole body was so transformed, you know. I felt by Prabhupada's touch, because it was very rare that Prabhupada would use his body so much like that and it was a real, you know, I really felt surcharged by that, empowered by that. And then I went back to the train and we went to Madras. It was about July, I believe, July of 70, and I was in Paris. Prabhupada had sent me to Europe to organize our temples in London and Paris and Hamburg. At that time there was no GBC, but he put me in charge to coordinate the temples there. So I was in Paris and I suddenly got a telegram. Your letter, 26th July, come Los Angeles immediately. I was on a plane that same day, and I just detached myself and I got on a plane and went to Los Angeles. So that was quite a time, because it was the time of, you know, our four sannyasis in our society there was some difficulty in their understanding of how the movement was to be run. So Prabhupada was very, very disturbed, because he had detected that there had been some poison which had come in terms of belittling his position, which had come from some of his godbrothers in India. So I came in the evening, and then the next morning Prabhupada called me, having heard I'd come, and he called me and he was very grave. And he looked very shriveled almost. And he looked up to me, and he just had a little spotlight on his table, desk lamp. He looked up and he said, have they told you? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, can you take me out of here? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, where will you take me? So I thought, and I said, well, I could take you to Florida. I said, it's not far enough. I said, I could take you to Europe. He said, the poison has spread there as well. Then I said, then where do you want to go? I said, I want to go to India. I think that Prabhupada had the ability to accomplish many, many purposes by each one of his actions. Later on, Prabhupada told me in 1977, he said, Prabhupada was laying in his bed in Krishna Balaram Temple, and we were reminiscing. He said, remember when you took me from Los Angeles? I said, yes. He said, at that time, he said, I went before Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish, and I said, my dear Lord, you have called me all the way here, and you have given me this wonderful temple. Now why are you sending me away? Prabhupada said, I couldn't understand why the Lord was sending me out. And he said, now I understand, because he wanted to give me this temple, Krishna Balaram Temple. He said, this is 100 times what every other temple in the world is. He said, but I didn't understand at that time. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's, I think it was Appearance Day. So I told Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, can we celebrate this in the evening, because then we'll have a lot of guests. Prabhupada said, no, it must be celebrated at noon. So it was on a Friday. I said, Friday evening we can fill up the temple. He said, no, it must be at noon. So we celebrated in the room, in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada had a little room. This is the La Cienega Boulevard Temple, L.A. Prabhupada had a side room next to the big temple room. So Prabhupada did all of the prayers and spoke about his Guru Maharaj. Then he said to me, "How is the feast going?" So I said, "I'll take a look." It was about 10:30. So I went in. Nothing was done. There was no preparation. So I went back to, and I said, "What is going on here?" I started screaming at them. They said, "Well, you told us it was going to be Friday night." I said, "Prabhupada wanted it at noon, maybe it was my mistake. I might not have conveyed the message in any case." So I went back to Prabhupada and he said, "So, how is it going?" And I said, "There's nothing done." Prabhupada just looked at me. Didn't say a word. Got up, walked out of his room, through the temple, through the prasadam hall, and into the kitchen. He immediately told the devotees, "Get this done, cut this vegetable, this." He cooked a feast in 1 hour for at least 70 devotees. Personally cooked the whole feast, at least 12 preparations, within 1 hour's time. And he always told me, I always remember this, Prabhupada always said, deity worship is 1 hour's business, cooking is 1 hour's business. Cooked the whole feast in 1 hour. And I remember one of the best things I remember about it was the way Prabhupada made the puris that day. Because every puri puffed up. He put in the puri in the hot ghee, and he would just touch it. And it was like he would touch them. I remember they would blow a little and he would touch them, even sometimes with his finger. They just perfect puris. Then the feast was offered, and it was brought out of Prabhupada's room after. It was given to Prabhupada, the whole Maha plate. Within about 3 minutes afterwards, it came out practically untouched. And we were all eating this big feast, and we saw Prabhupada didn't eat, and Prabhupada was very upset. But he still cooked the whole feast for his Guru Maharaj. He was determined that it must be, and he told him it must be offered by 12. But he was very disturbed. The first meeting we had with the whole group of members of Dinapan, the top chairman down, they all came and very formally they presented their cards to Prabhupada. I think this story is told in the Leelamrita. They all presented their cards and then they left, and Prabhupada was left with one, the number 7 man to just show us off at the end. It was like a whole ceremony. It was like a tea ceremony, but we drank water. They drank tea. They were on one side of the big, big oak desk, and we were on the other. So Prabhupada had a word with the man before we went to the limousine. And he asked the man, "What is, your goal?" And of course, Prabhupada had been given these calling cards by each of them. "My name is so-and-so. My name is so-and-so." So that man took all the cards and put them in a row, up and down, and he was number 7. When Prabhupada asked him what his goal in life was, he took the card number 7, and he went like this. And Prabhupada shook his head and laughed, and then he really, started to preach to this man about the nature of life and how temporary it was, and that was not the purpose of life. So Prabhupada was a real transcendental negotiator. He had me be the heavy man. And Dinapan would give a price, and I would say it's impossible, and I'd give this ridiculously low price, and they would just practically start crying. It was so ridiculous, the price. And that we would get into a big argument, and Prabhupada would just sit there in a neutral position, and finally he would act as if he was the arbitrator. And he'd say, "This is not good, this should not be quarreling like this." He said, "I will settle it." He said, "Neither side should argue like this. We must consider both the needs of each side." And he would pick the price that he wanted, which was still extremely low, but by that time they would just think that, Prabhupada was their savior. And in this way we went through all of the prices of each book, and Prabhupada got very low contract prices. And he was very proud that he had been able to get $60,000 worth of business with $5,000 down payment. He said, they have so much trust and faith in my writing. In London, of course, that was another interesting negotiation. Prabhupada told us, I got to London in September of 1969, and by that time Prabhupada was getting ready to get the place in Bury Place, 7 Bury Place. And what is a temple without deities? So Prabhupada gave us the instruction that you have to install Radha Krishna deities. But he didn't order the deities, and we didn't have any deities. He just said, such and such, December so-and-so was the date of the opening, and you have to have Radha Krishna deities. So we, started to go. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. How are you supposed to find Radha and Krishna in London? We just started to ask anyone and everyone. It was like a national alarm. Anyone knowing the whereabouts of Radha and Krishna, please phone such and such number. And that was the number of Mukunda's wife, Janaki. So, well, it went, week after week went by, and Prabhupada would call us and say, where are the deities? And we said, we don't know where Radha and Krishna are. Prabhupada said, you have to have deities. So finally, miraculously, when we were practically giving up, we get this phone call. Janaki gets a phone call. Someone says, we have Radha Krishna deities. So immediately she informed Mukunda, and Mukunda and I went down to this man's house. And the man took us into his study, and he said, I have some Radha Krishna marble deities. Would you like to look at them? So, would we like to look at them? We were ready to jump out of our skins, practically. Sure, we wanted to look at them. And he took off the cloth, and, we just offered our obeisances, because that was Radhalanda. So we said, they're beautiful. They're so beautiful. I mean, they were beautiful. And he said, well, I'm considering that I may be willing to give them to your temple. So we said, well, we have to, can we bring our spiritual master to see them? And he said, yes, you can do so. So we raced out, and we went to a phone booth. I remember we called immediately to Prabhupada's apartment. Prabhupada was living near Regent's Park, very nice apartment. And we called up, but he was resting, so we decided just to go over there. We went in there, we told him, Prabhupada, we found Radha and Krishna. So Prabhupada immediately said, take me, I want to see them. So we had a van, we used to have a van. And it was Prabhupada, and Mukunda, Shamsundar, and myself, maybe Gurudas, came in the van, and we went in. And by that time was the early evening. Prabhupada came in, and he started to talk with this Indian gentleman, very friendly way. The man said that these deities were ordered already for society, but somehow or other things had not worked out. There was some difficulty, and they could not use the deity. So Prabhupada would just ignore the point, and he just kept asking the man, where are you from? How are you? How's your wife? He made the man bring his wife in, bring the children in. Prabhupada, gave his blessings to everyone, just talking. And finally the man, said, Swamiji, don't you want to see the deities? And Prabhupada said, oh, yeah, yes, we can see the deities. It was just so nonchalant, as if he was not even interested. So, he said, please, I want to show them to you, So he took the man took Prabhupada over, and he showed him the deities. And Prabhupada looked and said, And he just turned around and walked and sat back in his sofa. So the man said, so Swamiji, what do you think? Can you use the deity? Prabhupada said, they looked like they may be used. He said, well, I'm thinking I can give them to you. Prabhupada said, yes, we could accept them. And he said, he asked me, go and see how heavy the deity is. So I went over, and Shamsundar went over, and I tilted Radharani, and I said, not very heavy. And she was heavy, but I said, not very heavy. Shamsundar had Krishna. Prabhupada said, all right, we'll take them now. He said, pick them up, and then the man said, wait, Swamiji, wait a moment. I think maybe he had an idea of recovering some of the cost. I don't know what he had an idea. He said, wait. And he said, no, there's no problem. It's not heavy. These are American boys. They're very strong. And we carried the deities out, and the man was just protesting, Swamiji, went 1 minute. And we walked right out to the van and brought Radha Krishna, put them in, and Prabhupada sat down in the seat next to the driver's seat. And he said, I'll take care of the deities. We'll be in touch with you. And the man just, the whole family was out there, and they were just like this. And Prabhupada said, okay, let's drive. So we drove off, and when we got around the corner, Prabhupada said, stop the car. And then we stopped the van, and Prabhupada said, take the cloth off the deities. We took the deities, and then Prabhupada just started to offer prayers. There were tears in his eyes, and he started to sing the prayers from Brahma Samhita. And he said, Krishna has now appeared in London. Pishima was adored and even worshipped, especially by the lady devotees. One time we were going in procession from Calcutta to Mayapur, and Pishima was in one of the rear cars. And then she got out, and all the women rushed there, and they were doing. And Prabhupada said, "What are they doing?" I said, "Well, Srila Prabhupada, they have respect for her, as they do, in a way, for you." He said, "Why? What is that? What has she ever done? She's just an old lady. What has she ever done?" I had a habit, whenever Prabhupada would tell me something, I would always say, just unconsciously, I know, I know, I know. And one day Prabhupada said, you know, you think you know everything. And I really, it's like that, you think you know everything. Another time, Prabhupada had this system when he did his construction projects in India. 2 signers on every check. Prabhupada was one signer and I was the other. There was only one problem when Prabhupada would travel out of the country. So one day I suggested to Prabhupada, why don't you sign some blank checks? Prabhupada did not like that idea at all. He said, this is my account. Is it all right that I decide how the money will be used? Is that all right with you? I was suggesting to him that we could do different things. Prabhupada had a system of keys, for keeping Prabhupada would keep a key under his keychain, under his wristwatch. This was the key to wherever his belongings were kept, his valuables were kept. So, he'd never part with this key. But because he was becoming very ill, I was always, desiring that Prabhupada would take me into his confidence. So one day he really gave me ultimate confidence in letting me hold the key. This was a key to his desk drawer. So I had the key, and then, naturally, what would I do but lose the key? So I came before Prabhupada. Prabhupada asked for something. I didn't tell him right away. I scoured Hare Krishna land. I went everywhere looking for that key, and I could not find it. I had people looking all over that place. And finally, Prabhupada called for something from the desk, and I went to Prabhupada, and I said, Srila Prabhupada, I have to tell you something. Prabhupada was laying down because he was ill. I said, yes. I said, Prabhupada, I lost the key. Prabhupada said, call the GBC. I said, which one, Prabhupada? He said, call the whole GBC here to decide what should be done. Oh, God. He said, call the whole GBC. So there was nothing I could do. I just walked out and I decided, okay, I'm going to call the GBC here. He wanted to call the whole GBC body to Bombay to decide what was going to be done with me, I guess. I don't know what the... So then I got this, I was just besides myself, and suddenly I thought, let me try another key. And, sure enough, it was an Indian lock. I just got another key, and somehow or other I opened it up. And I ran to Prabhupada. I said, Prabhupada, I said, I opened it. He said, how did you open it? I said, I found another key. And he thought, and he said, that means the lock was not very good. He said, then it doesn't matter if you lost that key because it's not a good lock. So then he said, now put the key on your Brahmin thread. He made me put the key on my thread, put the thread through it, and put the key. And he said, don't ever lose this. But he had a very interesting way of keeping the key. This key was a key that opened up a safe. The safe had a key that opened up his Almirah. And in the Almirah, under a special place was the key that opened up the safe in the Almirah. 4 keys. He had a whole key system. One key led to another key that led to another key that finally led to the key that opened up the safe. Prabhupada had a lot of systems. Another thing he had me do is that every key had to be labeled, and there had to be a log of all the keys, an index of all the keys. And not only was there an index of every key, there was an index of every item in every almirah. He wanted everything systematized. This was an Indian system. Just like you go to India, every seat, every desk, is gazetted, is numbered. That's the Indian government. Prabhupada did certain things, like Prabhupada told me, you have to keep all documents for 7 years. He had many things he learned from the Indian government. He always used to quote about the Indian railways, that he said, keep the wheels moving. He said that was a good motto for ISKCON, keep the wheels moving. Prabhupada was in the early days. I was the Mat commander in Los Angeles, La Cienega Temple. Prabhupada called me one day, and he was talking to me, and he asked me to get the Bhagavatam. He had the Bhagavatam, his original Bhagavatam. And he said the cover, was a spiritual sky. And he said, you see this spiritual sky? It's very big. He said, you cannot fathom how big this is. He said, in the spiritual sky, 3/4 is the spiritual sky, 1/4 is the material creation. That material creation has innumerable universes. One universe is so big the scientists can't measure it. And we're on one planet in one of those universes out of innumerable universes which are constituting 1/4 of the creation. So on this one planet, Earth, it's one of the smaller planets in this universe. He said there are 7 continents, and on one of the continents, North America, there's a great city called Los Angeles. And in that Los Angeles city, there's a long boulevard called La Cienega. And on that La Cienega boulevard, there is one church building, which is now a Hare Krishna temple. And in that one Hare Krishna temple, there is one temple commander, and he thinks that he is very important. And I was, I felt so small. Prabhupada said he thinks that he is very important. There is one Tamal Krishna, and he thinks that he is very important. I don't remember what it was that I did, but there was some foolish thing I did. And Prabhupada looked at me, There was something about, I had forgotten something. And so I said, Prabhupada, I just can't remember. He said, yes, you cannot remember. He said, because there is nothing inside there to be able to remember with. He said, simply 0, just 0. Whew. I thought, this is the final thing. After all these years, there's nothing in there, I said, oh, boy. It's a heavy chastisement. When we got to Rishikesh, Prabhupada was ill. And we were staying in this house, Ganga Darshan, very nice house, right overlooking the Ganga. Prabhupada had been lured there by Navayogendra Swami, who told him, if you drink water, I think it was he who lured, if you drink water there, you'll get back your health. So as soon as we got there, Prabhupada told me, bring Ganga Jal. And I immediately put on my gumption, I dove off the 2nd story of the building, because it was overlooking the Ganga, and I dove into the Ganga from the 2nd floor. Prabhupada was getting his massage, and I went out with a lota and came back, swam back with the lota, brought it up, and Prabhupada, right in the middle of the, and he was not eating well at this time. It was the last months. He immediately took a full, glass of water, and a big belch came out afterwards, and Prabhupada said, accepted. And he smiled, and he was very pleased with that. I was standing there dripping wet, and he accepted. So then he immediately ordered, go out and get kachoris and jalebis. There was one shop very famous for making jalebis and kachoris in Rishikesh. And Prabhupada said, this hot jalebis is a remedy, cure for sore throat. He said, now it is a little cold, we must get hot jalebis. So we ate hot jalebis, and he said, this is, whenever you have sore throat, you eat hot jalebis. But must be made fresh hot. And another time, Prabhupada gave me the cure for, it was a very nice cure, isn't it? Jalebis, if they're made nicely, are so tasty, and that's how you get better. Another cure he gave me was when you have dysentery. Hot puris and salt. The puris must be cooked in ghee. They must be right off the fire with salt. And sure enough, I had this dysentery. I took hot puris and salt, immediately cured, like a cork. His son was there, Vrindavan Chandra, and Vrindavan Chandra and myself were with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada started to remember his grihastha life. And then he started to say, he said, my wife was your mother. He said, your mother. He was telling his son, your mother was very good, very chaste, very devoted. He said, one could not ask for a better wife. He said, it was I. He said, I was not very easy. And he started to cry. He said, she was so good. And it was like he exhibited all of these apparently human qualities, and as a sannyasi. And he said, I should not say this. He said, I should not say it. But I could see it was just a way of healing any possible feeling which that his son might have had towards him for having left the family and taken sannyas. And it wasn't acting, but he was very soft. His heart was so soft. I liked moments like this where, there were very extraordinary moments where it's so different than what normally Prabhupada showed in his official position. But they were so special and charming. About book distribution, Prabhupada said, big books are more important than softbacks. He said, hardback is more important than softback. He was very firm about this point. Give out big books. He wanted more big books distributed. He always said that. And he really liked the Radha Damodar party. He said the main thing he liked about the Radha Damodar party, he said, you have understood a very important point, that in the Kali Yuga, people don't come to the temple. You have to bring the temple to the people. That this was the whole idea about book distribution. Go out to the people. Prabhupada said very clearly that any way that they can come into contact with these books, he said even they just touch it. He said even if they look at a picture, if they touch the book, he said they begin their devotional life. Therefore, he told the book distributors, put the book in their hands. He said if they just touch the book, never mind even read, if they touch the book, it has so much power. One time Prabhupada would tell me, another thing he didn't like is that I would fall asleep sometimes. As soon as I get in the car, I'd fall asleep. So we were riding in the car, in the back seat, I was sitting next to Prabhupada. And I was just like this. So Prabhupada said, you are sleeping. So I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not sleeping. He said, you were sleeping. I said, I don't think I was sleeping. He said, I said you were sleeping, you were sleeping. He said, chant Hare Krishna. So I started to chant, and Prabhupada was chanting japa very quietly, and I was going, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Hare. And then when you know how you catch yourself when you stop, and I looked at Prabhupada, just chanting. Another time, Upendra was sleeping in the front seat, and he was going like this. So Prabhupada leaned over, and he very gently caught Upendra's sika from behind. So when Upendra went like this, the sika yanked. Upendra turned around. He thought I had done it. He was very angry, But it was Prabhupada had caught his sika. So Prabhupada had a very big appetite. He really relished prasadam. And he would take at least 45, 50 minutes to take prasadam. And he would eat alone. And he would chew and chew with his eyes closed. Chewing, chewing, chewing. And just really relishing prasad. When we went to India, of course, we got to eat with Prabhupada regularly because we would be invited. Prabhupada said, this is preaching. He said, we make members by eating. He said, very good preaching. Because in Surat, when we went to Surat in Gujarat, he made a condition that he would only take prasadam if the person would become the life member. So we got 30 days invitation. He made 30 members. He said, this is preaching. Then all the devotees would sit together. Prabhupada would be at the head on their little chonkies, and we would all sit and take prasad. So it was very nice. We got trained to take prasadam with Prabhupada. Prabhupada was in a room in London, Bury Place, and he was appreciating the service of Jamuna Devi. Prabhupada glorified Jamuna Devi unlimitedly for her qualities and her devotion. He once wrote her a letter that she was on the level of Bhava Bhakti. In a letter he wrote this, very high position. And, but one day he said to me, he said, if she weren't a woman, I would make her a GBC. If she weren't a woman, I would make her a GBC. Someone brought ice cream from New Vrindavan to Prabhupada in Vrindavan, the final days. And Prabhupada took it right on a teaspoon and ate ice cream from New Vrindavan. Somehow they had dry ice that kept it cold. And they brought him a ring they had made. And as soon as we showed Prabhupada the ring, he said, so, where is the bride? He said, where is the bride?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, there you go.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Why did you decide to cut the nectar?
Oh, it ended. It ended.
That was really, really, really marvelous.
Yeah.
Maybe you should share that video with me. I think I've listened to this before, but it's like from out of this world.
Yeah, it's evergreen.
Yeah.
So we decided to play these memories from Maharaj because for some reason the speaker couldn't show up.
Okay.
So if anyone has any comment about what we heard from Maharaj or any realizations, sure.
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you very much, Prabhu, for asking for that. I love that comment of Maharaj, when Maharaj said that in Kali Yoga, people will not come to the temple, we should take temple to the people. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful, yes. It's the same thing like Muhammad said, if the mountain cannot come to us, we have to go to the mountain, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually make me to start thinking that
Hare Krishna.
like when we were in GBC college.
Yeah.
His Grace Counter Yap also was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
He said it actually shows us all the quotes that in Kali Yoga, Prabhupada wanted devotees to make their individual home temple.
Yeah.
And he said that is where the idea of the Bhakti Vriksha came.
Okay.
And that is why you see that in Dubai, the Bhakti Vriksha actually works so much. It's so wonderful in that area. Yeah. And that same Bhakti Vriksha also is doing well also in India also. They are using it to some large extent.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that in the western part of the world, we have not been able to tap into it. So I don't know how we can go into the Bhakti Vriksha file, see how we can look out to put it according to time, place, and circumstances to our condition in a way that, because that is the way forward. That is the way forward.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, Sri Kavi. Absolutely. I remember Kuntia Prabhu, who came and tried to educate us and train us about this Bhakti Vriksha and Namahata programs. I also heard from one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, where Srila Prabhupada was having a walk with his disciples, and they came upon a very beautiful church building. So Srila Prabhupada pointed with his walking stick, "What is that building?" So the disciples told him, oh, it's so and so church. So Srila Prabhupada says, in the near future, that is how our movement is going to be like. The temple is going to be there, and the devotees will be living all over, because these days, lots of people think Hare Krishna is dead because they don't see devotees as they used to see them in the early 70s and 80s, where devotees were like, every devotee at that time was like living in a temple. So that's how they know devotees. But in today's world, there are devotees in all fields of work. Yeah. Madam Raj Tarini was asking for the link, so the link has been shared. Yeah, the link has been shared. Let me see.
Yeah, I've seen the link also. Very wonderful. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yeah, it's been shared. Thank you. One interesting thing I found was, see, I know that Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, the energy, the enthusiasm with which they started the movement, that will never happen again in ISKCON. It will never happen again. The dedication, the surrender, and the risks they took to establish this movement for some of us, somebody as rascal as myself, to come to know about this movement and be part of it is amazing. And what I find is, like, when the Lord Chaitanya appeared, before Lord Chaitanya appeared, and soon after he appeared, a lot of his associates all took birth in different places, different families, different homes, all walks of life. And when it was time for him to start his movement, they all came from different corners to participate in his Sankirtan party. So similarly, I see with Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada came, there were all these amazing eternal associates of Srila Prabhupada who came into this world, took birth in different parts of the world, different families, excuse me, the so-called militias and Yavana families, but they were all pure devotees. They're all pure devotees, because if you listen to just what Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj shared, it's unbelievable. No ordinary devotees can perform what they did. And one other interesting thing was how Srila Prabhupada was so transcendentally crafty. The way they had the Radha Landanishwara deities, they pretended as if he was not really interested in having the deities, but he was so much eager. He had actually prayed to have the deities, but he acted as if he didn't want the deities. And then when this person told him, he says, Swamiji, it seems you are not interested in the deities. Are you really interested in the deities? He says, yeah, casually. And then he asked the disciples, okay, move the deities, let's see how heavy. No, they said they're not too heavy. And then he says, okay, Swamiji, do you think you can have a use for these deities? He said, yeah. So the disciples lifted the deities, and then they took the deities in the car. Then it came to his senses. Oh no, Swamiji is taking the deities. Maybe Swamiji will have to give me something. And then he says, oh, no, don't worry. These are American young boys. They are very strong. They can carry it. So I don't know. I think that was so transcendentally crafty, you know, Shafan. All God is to Shafan.
Yeah, Prabhupada's pastimes are just completely out of this world. You can't just
out of this world. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. I mean, you can listen to them, and you never get bored. It's so. I mean, may Guru and Krishna bless Yadruba Prabhu and his associates, how they've been able to compile these memories, and it's so nectarian. I love it, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, love it also.
Yeah. Actually, there are 2 points that actually captured my attention in the course of the lecture. Actually, every bit of the narration of the pastimes are just too captivating. There's a life that you can't just take anyone out of it. But in the very beginning and the last part of the memories, caught my attention in relation to our present day. Kavi Kalaprabhu, who has actually touched some wonderful aspects, how preaching should be done at modern times. But in the beginning, how Prabhupada was encouraging all of the devotees to take some job.
Yes.
Just to running was so practical with the reality of what is going on there. And looking at today, we took some things. I think one of the major challenges I would think is that how we artificially became too renounced and too detached, even when we're not realized.
Yeah.
It's one of the major challenges that bring down the pace of our development. Yeah. That's my observation. Yeah. And the recent resolution passed by the GBC on women Diksha gurus, and the statement, that last part of the memory caught my attention. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, because you're very right. Yes.
Yeah. But
Prabhupada was saying is that if she were not a woman, she would have made the GBC.
Mm-hmm. But now we have a GBC woman, we have even the GBC gurus, women gurus, and so much controversies around it.
That has been a very, very serious bone of contention in ISKCON today. About women female gurus. So
I think if Prabhupada were to be around also, it will change according to time, place, and circumstances. The way things are going in the world now, because so many things have changed since 1960 to this present day.
Yeah.
So and things will continue to change also. Those days we don't have Zoom, we don't have even phone to make calls far distance like we have today. We don't have all this. So many things changing every day. Things are going to be changing. So as things are changing, surely so many things going to change. The only one that is very difficult for them to change now is that devotees wearing clothes for preaching, which we're still holding on very strongly to, because once you remove that, the identity is lost. So they are holding very strongly to that. But still, many devotees on their own have separated and started the preaching. They are pioneering that preaching of you don't need to wear dhoti to be a devotee. So many things are going to change, because that is the only thing that is constant in this world,
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. You're right about that. Change is the rule of nature.
Our philosophy is Bija Kalapatra, according to place, time, and circumstances, but at the same time, there are some core aspects of Siddhanta that are of a concern in terms of adaptation stuff. Because I remember one experience. I went to one controller of immigration. Actually, that time he resumed as the controller of immigration in the Plateau State, in the place where I stayed. So, and he was a very close friend to my friend, who also comes once in a while to the temple. He reads our books. So I took advantage of that. I said, let's go visit him. And then we went, and then we visited him. We were chatting. Then I introduced myself as a devotee, and he shouted. He said, "What? Hare Krishna? I thought you guys left here completely." And I said, no, we are here. He said, "But I don't see you guys again, you know, that thing, that that emblem of you guys. I mean, that hair on the head, at the back of your head, the top hair at the back of your head, that funny kind of robe, and then the food we eat, you know. I will do everything and anything to come to the temple that day, those days, because the food taste is just all of it different. And do you guys still have a temple around anywhere?" So I said, "Well, yes, we have temple. We have temple. Actually, that's why I'm here, because I just wanted to introduce, because we want to talk to influential people and people who are in the position, so that at least they can influence others." He said, "Wow." He said, "But then, what is the reason behind all of these changes?" Then I explained to him. I said, "Well, you know, as we expand our preaching activities, we realize that sometimes people become so uncomfortable just because we are dressed in a particular way, and then we want to make people realize that our dressing has nothing to do with what we teach. It's just our dress, just like an officer's dress. You are sitting in your office now. You are the controller of immigration, but you are wearing a babariga, and then ideally, I said, I can see your clothes hang behind you, which shows the official uniform, but you are wearing nothing." He kept silent for a time. He said, "But then, does it mean that this is where I'm going? All of these stories coming to this particular point." Now, he now said, after keeping silent, because it's like I caught him off guard when I mentioned the way he was dressing and the way he put his clothes up. But then he now asked a question. He said, "So, does it mean now as time changes, then you just change everything about your organization also?" He said, "Well, you don't have to change, because the people do not accept you for who you are, because you have something that is beyond the perception of ordinary people." And I also kept silent for a while before I could answer him. And every time that topics like this comes up, that conversation comes back to my mind, because we see that in ISKCON, yes, sometimes these days we don't dress, we don't even put sticker. Yes, we have to adapt, but there are some core aspects of our Christian activities that are changing, that are of concern. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, Kavi Prabhu was also right about what he was saying. What I think it is that there are two aspects: principles and details. The principles must always be the same. The details might change due to time, place, circumstance. And there are some changes that may be done, but may only be done by a certain type of devotee. In other words, somebody, a devotee like Sri Prabhupada, a Nitya Siddha, who is been specially empowered to do what he did, also has the power to make some adjustments. For instance, before Sri Prabhupada came to the West, no women were allowed to live in the temple to serve. In our parampara. But he came to the West and he let that happen. Before he came to the West, no woman was ever initiated as a Brahmini. You know, there is such a word as a Brahmini, but Brahmini simply means that a woman whose husband is a Brahmin. If a woman's husband is a Brahmin, the woman automatically becomes a Brahmini. But I don't recall whether this was shared by Mother Rukmini, who features on our platform, or somebody else. But she shared, this devotee shared that one time they approached Srila Prabhupada and pleaded with him, Srila Prabhupada, why is it that the men, they all have Brahmin thread and they chant? Because at the time they were all looking for other mantras to chant also alongside the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you know. So the men, when they were initiated as Brahmins, they were given another mantra aside from the Maha Mantra. So the women felt left out. So they asked Prabhupada, you're giving them some secret mantra. Why don't you give us some? So based on such request, Prabhupada started initiating the women as Brahmins, but he did not give them Brahmin thread. And again, before Prabhupada came to the West, we know everybody had to chant 64 rounds. And he saw how rush, busy the Western life is. So he lowered it down to 32. And then 32 became a problem. So he lowered it down to 16. So he said,
yeah, Maharaj, I think he shared some dream. Yeah. Maharaj shared that, I think he shared that part of the lecture.
Yeah, yes, he says, yeah, 16, no more. We're not going down. So, I mean, what's the name? Our dear brother, Ganga Prashad Prabhu, was one time explaining that we have our 16 counting beads plus 4 extra beads. So when you chant 16 rounds, that 4 indicates that the 16 is being multiplied by 4 by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada multiplies our 16 rounds by 4 to make it 64. So Srila Prabhupada is actually chanting 32 rounds for all of us when we chant 16 rounds. You know, so he did some adjustments that only he can do such adjustments. The rest of us cannot do such grave adjustments. So time, place, circumstances there yet, but there are, like Sarika Prabhu was saying, there are certain basic things that we cannot adjust. We cannot make any changes to them. And one of such is the number of rounds. You know, yeah.
Bishop Abu, you are there?
Yeah, I'm here, Prabhuji.
Yeah, me, I always have that. I believe in that also, that only the Acharya can make some adjustment. But there's one thing in this world, because me, I have one disease. I try to think out of the box, and it's a very big disease for me, because I try to say
it's a very good big disease. It's very good.
And what I'm trying to say in essence is that people are going to try so many ways, and whoever succeeds is what the world will follow. Oh, okay, this person has succeeded. Oh, it's another Acharya. This is how things happen in this world. So some people already started trying. Another Maharaj already started. He might have not succeeded, but somebody else will come up again and try. So whoever succeeds will be the next Acharya in changing those things that we think that cannot be changed. And that is how it's going to be, because we are in Kali Yoga. And things are always changing every day. Things are always moving in a different dimension every day. We are in the age of 5G now. From age of no G. During the Prabhupada, there was no G at all. Then we came to 1G, then 2G, 3G. Things are moving very fast now. Now we are in 5G. Less than few years, we are in 5G. And in the children we are giving birth today, at the age of 7, 8 years, they know how to operate your phone more than you. And you're telling me that they are going to continue in the olden days of where we think, oh, no. This.
You're right.
So what I'm trying to say in essence is that, yes, people are going to continue to try. Me, I'm not saying I'm going to be one of them, but I know that, yes, people are going to continue to try to help people to take this Krishna consciousness according to their whatever area or culture. Like in Nigeria now, I know that things has to be adjusted to feed the people of Nigeria, because unless that one is done, majority of people will not take it, because there are some people, they have this phobia of, oh, I don't want to become an Indian. I don't want to become a this. And if you hear Cyril Wolf, there's one very ardent follower of Narendra Maharaj of Krishna West. The guy is very popular on Facebook. One of his main concerns is that we are not an Indian. We are Vaishnavas, and a Vedic culture is a universal culture. And, dressing like this is Indian culture. So that does not make him a devotee. He has his own arguments. I don't know, maybe you're getting my point. So he has all his own arguments why dressing like this, doing like this doesn't make you a devotee. That is his own argument. I'm not saying I follow his argument. I'm just saying that, let me give another example. It's just like this. We are in Nigeria now. Let me give another. I watched one movie, Indian movie. The Christian who want to preach Christianity in India, which is successful, a little bit successful in the South India. What did they do? Their priests also dress. They don't dress like people in the Rome, like all those with collar and all those white collar. And they don't dress. No, they dress like Indians. They have to wear tie dhoti, wear that their lungi. As a Christian priest in South India. So that is how they dress there, to convince the Indians. So no, you can still be a Christian. You don't need to dress like Romans or this. You can still be a Christian. So they dress like that. So what I'm trying to say is that, like that also, in Nigeria also, like if you look very closely, now only very few people still follow Orthodox churches in this part of the world. Majority of people, they like to go for this Pentecostal. Why? Because they want to dress the way they like. They want to be free in dressing, and whether it's disturbing somebody, they don't care. So that's what I'm trying to say is that, according to time, place, and circumstances, people will appreciate something more in the way they understand. But you take a achaya, just like you say, you take an achaya to be able to do that and still keeping the essence in saving those souls and giving them God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. But until people continue to try, people will come and try, and when one person got it right, we call him Acharya, and he becomes the next Acharya. That is it.
Yeah, you're right. It's just the nature of the age. The age is such that I was just listening to what's the name? His Grace Chaitanya Prabhu, and he was saying that in the ancient days, when people refer to other people as very prosperous, prosperity in that age, in the ancient days, meant that somebody is able to use his mind, his intellect, and his body to serve God. But in today's world, prosperity means that one can gratify his senses. If you have means to gratify your senses, you are considered prosperous. If you have big mansion, nice cars, jacuzzi, things like that, you're considered prosperous. So things are changing, but when people appreciate something, it does not necessarily mean that it's good. But it's good for those people who are appreciating. For example, those who do engage in drugs, they love it, they appreciate it. To them, it's so nice, it's beautiful. To those of us who do not engage in drugs, when we see them do that, it's, how can you be living your life that way? You know? So it's difficult. It's difficult, unfortunately. And that is why, to me, again, it comes down to Srila Prabhupada. I have always had this belief that part of the reason why Srila Prabhupada was so much successful in establishing ISKCON was not just simply because he's a Nitya Siddha Param Guru. That is there. But it's also because he also had, excuse me to say, material intellect. He knew how to deal with people. Like Ramakrishna Goswami Maharaj was sharing that it was just himself and Srila Prabhupada who were able to sign a check for finances. And because Srila Prabhupada was constantly traveling, there was a time, sure, yes, Aleka Prabhu, yes. There was a time that, well, Hare Krishna, we'll bring the class to an end, yeah, here. But we're still going, this is offline. Sure. This is a family reunion.
So, they're still online. I have to
okay. So Ramakrishna Goswami Maharaj was saying that he approached the Prabhupada and then asked him, Srila Prabhupada,
Sade Babu. Sade Babu.
Yeah.
You can tell Salika Prabhu to remove it from line. You can stop the online so that we can talk more intimate, you know?
Yeah, he's doing that. Yeah, he's doing that. I think, yeah, he's doing that.
I'm to do that.
But what, let me see.